Tip number 6 is simply to test your test. These are complicated technologies, and when you're integrating SiteSpect and Omniture or Core Metrics or Web Trends, it's not necessarily going to work for you the first time right out of the box. The individual technologies will, but they may not communicate properly. So you want to test your test. Make sure that you're passing data back and forth between these systems so that you can build segments in Omniture or Web Trends, that you can get the information and the metrics that you need, and that you're getting all of the information. You want to do this before you start launching tests, because you may not have a second chance or a third chance, depending on the number of resources required. So tip number 6, test your test. Make sure the technologies are talking to each other the right way. Tip number 7 is to clarify your testing timeline. Now, there's a notion in A/B and multivariate testing that all you need to do is test for statistical significance. But that's absolutely not true. You do need to have statistical significance, but you also need to have a fair representation of your visitor traffic over time. If yours is a global organization, you may not get a real, true random sample of your audience if you only test for 3 hours during the day on a Monday. You need to test over all 7 days in the week, and you need to look for day variation and day part variation. So to this end, I propose a rule called the 7+1 testing timeline. It basically says that you're going to test for 7 whole days with 1 day on the front end of that to make sure that all the kinks are worked out of data collection and the testing process. And if you have the luxury of time, test for 14 days with a day on either end, so 14+2. The advantage of doing this is that you get a great view of your customers and your visitors over time, you get a good random population, and it also gives you a lot of data to work from. Now, if you're a high traffic site, another advantage is that if you're going to test for 7 days, you may be able to test much smaller sample sizes, and instead of looking at 20% of your traffic going through the test, you may be able to put 5% or 2% of your traffic. Now, your mileage will vary inevitably, but the longer you test for, the better view you get of your visitors and customers. Tip number 8 is a lot of fun. Tip number 8 is about communicating your results. Now, you don't want to run tests and only communicate about your successes. You want to, again, communicate about successes and failures and try to figure out what you're learning about your audience with every test where you don't appreciate the results you're looking for. You also don't want to simply send out the results as a flat email saying this test worked, this test didn't work, this is what we've learned. Build presentations, bring people together, communicate about these results in an engaging way, and try to generate enthusiasm for testing, right? Testing is not easy. It's something that the organization needs to put effort into. And the more engaging you can be as a testing manager, or you can be as a senior stakeholder for testing, the more likely you are to get those resources. So communicate your results and communicate them effectively. Tip number 9 is to test against segments. Now, when you get good at this, you're going to recognize that a test against your whole audience is not as valuable as a test against your best audience. Instead of looking at all customers, you want to look at your best customers, or your repeat customers, or your repeat high value customers. So instead of looking at all of these football stadiums full of people, you want to start to look at an individual group, an audience within those football stadiums, and run tests against those folks. This is where tremendously valuable data can come from. It takes a little more setup, but as you get better and better at testing, start to think about testing against those segments. And our last tip is simply to dig deeper. Don't just stop looking at the conversion rate. Don't just stop looking at a click-through rate, or even the metrics applied to your key performance indicators, or the tests applied to your KPIs. Dig deeper. Take the data out of your testing system and put it into a true regression analysis tool. Look at that data in the context of the valuable data that it truly is. Now, this is Ian Ayer's thesis in Supercrunchers, is that in testing and online, we are creating humongous volumes of data, all of us, every day, that can be analyzed and looked at in different ways. So don't be afraid to dig deeper. Don't be afraid to go back and look at the results of that test and say, what else can we learn from this data set? What else might there be in this data that tells us about our customers or about our opportunities? Thank you so much for listening to this webcast today. I want to leave you with a few parting thoughts. I strongly believe, and we at Web Analytics Demystified believe, that testing is the next wave in digital measurement. We've spent a lot of time over the last decade working on getting our tagging correct and getting our measurement taken properly, but the time is now to start thinking about how we can use that data to our business advantage and start looking back at reports and start taking actions based on the data and analysis we generate. Now you need to be smart about testing, and so hopefully the 10 tips that I presented in this short webcast are helpful to you. There's a lot more detail available in the white paper available at www.sitespect.com/testing success. If you have any questions about this webcast, the content, or the white paper, you can either address them to me at eric.peterson@webanalyticsdemystified.com or on Twitter at EricTPeterson, or to this webcast sponsor, Kim Ann King at SiteSpect, kking@sitespect.com, or on Twitter at SiteSpect. Thank you all again so much for listening to this webcast, and on behalf of Web Analytics Demystified and SiteSpect, we wish you all the best with your testing efforts.